Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Today we want to talk about open source, proprietary software, and security. This is an interesting discussion, and it comes to the front because GitHub recently acquired Semmle, and that is actually going to help to look for code vulnerabilities inside of GitHub libraries. Very interesting. And so I wanted to go ahead and talk about this and address it. And I want to jump out first and foremost by saying I like preferring FOSS software where I can. And I personally am okay with dealing with things that are a little bit more buggy or less streamlined in many cases. There's some cases where you really just do want the best that you can get. And I completely understand that. I'm never going to part friendships over somebody who wants to use proprietary software. What my purpose is here is to teach you that you can accomplish a lot of these things with FOSS-based software. And with that being said, what we want to do here is look at open source software, one of the issues that it has, and some other factors that might help make open source software better in the coming days. So let's go ahead and jump on over to this Wired article here. And this is looking at GitHub takes aim at open source software vulnerabilities. Now, to read this headline, you might think it says, oh man, they're just another bashing open source. Let's go with proprietary. And that's actually not at all what the article was about. I don't know if that's what they intended to try and say. Maybe not. But let's go ahead and talk about what they are doing. Primarily what they're looking at is looking at open source. They kind of mentioned proprietary just a little bit. And one of the things that some people are talking about in the open source versus proprietary argument is sometimes there's more vulnerabilities in it, which really isn't actually true. We'll get into why that is. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and get into why that is now before we jump on in. So I pulled down here the bug reports. So CVE details, this will show us the vulnerabilities. That's what this the CVE details are, is the list of bugs. So what we're looking at here is Linux kernel vulnerabilities. You can see in the year 1999, we had 19 all the way up. It looks like one of the highest years was 2017 with about 500. Altogether, since 1999 to 2019, there were 2,333 vulnerabilities. Comparing that to Windows 10, we don't have nearly as long of a history. 2005 to 2019, we had 1,111. Each year, there has not been a year as big as the biggest Linux year, but you'll actually see that many of the Linux years are actually pretty small compared to the Windows years. So it begs this question. I mean, look at this going, yeah, there's still double the amount of bug reports. And some people will suggest and look at this and say, see, there's a lot of vulnerabilities in Linux and we don't see as many in Windows sometimes. The difference is, though, is that Linux is open source, which means the code is there and people are auditing it. Windows is not open source. A bug report only gets on the CVE list if it's actually caught. It's almost like the coronavirus. An illness that's so bad, you have to get tested to know if you have it. I mean, literally. And that's what happens with Windows. We don't recognize the vulnerabilities until they are actively exploited. So you get more zero-day vulnerabilities showing up in Windows than you have showing up in Linux. Have there been security vulnerabilities found in Windows that have not been zero-day? Yes. Have there been zero-day exploits in Linux? Yes. But as a general trend, because Linux is open source, we see the bugs before they're exploited and usually get them fixed, but this results in more total bug reports being submitted because more people can look at the code. And that's kind of where somebody got into a Stack Exchange question about this. You know, looking at the counted CVEs by product, I'm tempted to use it as an indicator which programs are the most secure. Is this misleading? The best answer, no, the entries are not a good source to rank products as by their overall security, for the reasons I already mentioned. If it's open source, more people are looking at it, the bugs get reported and usually get fixed before they were exploited. Versus Windows, sometimes that occurs. Again, it's just kind of a 50-50. There's no one guarantee one way or the other, and I'm not saying Windows is bad. Windows is actually very secure these days. It is very secure. And for me, I don't use Windows today just because of the privacy aspects. They're doing some proprietary things. They're collecting data that I do not feel comfortable giving out. And that's my personal reason for not wanting to use Windows. It is a good operating system otherwise. Okay, but let's go ahead and get on back to the article. The biggest challenge with open source software is that sometimes there just aren't not enough people to actually look for the bugs in it. And then sometimes people just don't know when the vulnerabilities are there. Or GitHub has a lot of people on it that are not necessarily professional coders. They're experimenting, they're getting things to work, and that is a very good thing. We need that, but they might inadvertently insert a bug that is problematic. And unless somebody spots it and corrects it, that bug could end up in some software. So with that, what they are doing here is they have acquired, GitHub has acquired, is it Semmle, I believe? So here is the bug report. It's Semmle. And with acquiring Semmle, what they are able to do now, this is an application that allows developers to look for code snippets. And what they can do now, and what GitHub is looking to do with implementing Semmle into its family, is they can now say, these are the vulnerable code snippets that we know about. Go search the repository and report back if you find them. This is the exact same methodology that antivirus systems use. We have a list. It's actually the same way the immune system works. We have a list of something that we know is wrong. Let's go look for that in the code. In the case of an antivirus software, we know what the bug is, we know what the problem is, so we look for that type of pattern of behavior or that type of code or that type of execution file. When we find it, we report it, we quarantine it. That's what GitHub is looking to do. They want to use this Semmle application and feed into it the known bugs and then send it loose on the GitHub repository so that the developers can now have a security audit of their individual software. So if you program something in that is known to be a bug and is known to be a vulnerability, they can give you the report, they can tell you where the error is, and they can tell you how to fix it. Now, there could be some downsides to this if we're talking about security, and privacy, I should say. And we also have to remember that Microsoft now owns GitHub. So some people are a little bit more leery about this. The question now is this something that will be used against users in the future? That is an open question that we need to ask, but it is definitely one worth thinking about. Overall, though, being that I think most bugs are introduced into software by accident and not maliciously, this can actually help to spot and fix and correct these type of bugs before they make their way out into final products and before a zero-day exploit is done on a new piece of software based on an old type of error. And that is where I think that this is a really good application out of the gate. Now, I personally don't do any real programming these days, so I will rely on you guys to tell me what you think. Do I have this completely wrong, or is this something that yes, it's going to be good? And yes, I do understand a little bit that there could be some concerns, but nevertheless, this is, in my opinion, it looks like a pretty good thing. So this article here is in the description down below. Go ahead and have a look at that. Let me know your thoughts about all of this. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Let me know. If you'd like to help support the channel, have a look at switchedtolinux.com/support. Join in on all of the various social media applications. We have those up there on the screen there, so you can follow along. If you're not getting video notifications, and I realize many of you are not these days, follow along on the social media. When I post a new video, you will get the notification through that. So thanks for coming along, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.